John, you especially worked long and hard to get Dusty Baker to join us on this show. I mean, I'm not talking weeks, I'm not talking months, I'm talking years, and we finally got him. Dusty Baker is joining us on the show.
Well, Dusty Baker is worth it. I mean, the guy is a great speaker. Not only was a great player, great manager. He's great on the TBS broadcast. I mean, we're talking about a Renaissance man who has an interesting take and profound take on just about everything. So, really looking forward to this one this week.
Absolutely. And we look forward to talking about the two teams that still can make this a Subway World Series, the Yankees, Mets, the NLCS, the ALCS. We'll play hit and error at the end if you stick with us on the show with Joel, Sherman, and Jon Heyman. John, the travel log continues, obviously. You're now back in New York. I left New York this morning. I'm talking to you from a hotel room in Cleveland. I could see the football stadium out my hotel window here. It means we're nice and deep into the playoffs, the LCS. As we're speaking, the Yankees are up 2-0. The Mets are tied 1-1 with the Dodgers. And look, that's the more interesting series right now. Can the Mets pull yet another upset coming home? It's the series you're on. So why don't I let you take it away? Give me whatever you're thinking for the back
Yeah.
end of this series.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about this being an interesting series. I think there's some of the highest rated games in years, in decades, even the Mets and Dodgers. I mean, two, $300 million teams, but they're not their whole teams, right? I mean, the Dodgers have all these injuries, and the Mets obviously have that dead, quote unquote, dead money, right? They're paying Scherzer and Verlander. So neither one is truly a $300 million team. Both very interesting right now. But at the beginning of the year, I think, what did Vegas say that over under on the Dodgers was like, I don't know, was it 108 wins or 111? I mean, they were expected to be a juggernaut. The Mets were expected to be around 500. David Stearns thought they were a playoff caliber team. I'm not sure too many other people did. And right now it feels like the Mets have the upper hand because, I mean, the Dodgers are going to have to use at least, if they're going to go to the end here, they're going to have to use at least one more bullpen game. And even the other games, I know Flaherty did a great job in game one, but Yamamoto, I don't think he can really throw his splitter like normal with his shoulder situation. So they're kind of babying him to some degree. Walker Buehler, second Tommy John, not looking that great. I mean, they are decimated in that rotation. I know they have a great bullpen, but I don't think we would have ever expected at the beginning of this year that the Mets would at least be on even footing with the Dodgers or maybe even have a slight edge. And I think they do.
Yeah, John, it's this Final Four. Hey, you get where you get. The World Series ring will be like everyone else's. A parade will be. These are really four floored teams right now. Like nobody got to close to 100 this year. And we're seeing it either because of the way the game is played now, or injury, or inability to get full rosters, whatever it is. These are not spectacular, can't believe it teams, and that's really opened the field for the Mets who've gotten on this crest. And I think part of it is clearly Lindor has played like one of the five best players in the world. But it's hard to do this show this week, John, and not talk about Mark Vientos, who, like, it starts as he doesn't even win a job in spring training. Brett Beatty wins the third base job. He kind of gets sent down after hitting, I think, a walk-off homer earlier in the year. And then, like, at first you're saying, oh, that's a nice little story, nice little story. Well, it's not a nice little story now. He's one of the best hitters in the sport. And it's like getting a gift from nowhere because who saw this coming? And so, like, you're sitting and saying, with everything we thought about the Dodger lineup, a lineup with Betts and Ohtani and Freeman, if Freeman is limited and Betts is never going to be like rise in the postseason, is the Mets lineup actually longer and better than the Dodgers? I think it is.
Maybe, I don't know. Kike Hernandez is a different player in the
Yes.
postseason. I mean, the guy's got, average offensive player. Normally, it's like 880 lifetime OPS in the postseason. But right now, yeah, the Mets, I mean, nobody compares to Vientos. He's amazing. And they try, past regime, so we're not blaming anybody currently with the Mets. He was thrown into some trade offers. Not surprisingly, right? I mean, he was well below Beatty on the depth chart. There was not a consideration that he was going to be a starting third baseman because they didn't feel like he was going to play the position well enough. And they still take him out defensively. he made an incredible play. I mean, I'm not going to say he's Brooks Robinson, but he made an amazing play in foul territory against the Phillies. And he's been fine other than that defensively, but offensively, nobody has been on his level at this point. And yeah, I mean, right now the Mets offense does look at least as good as the Dodgers, which I think the Dodgers are the best offensive team in baseball at full strength. It is a little cool here. Maybe I'm a little sensitive because I was just in LA where it was perfect, but it's a little cool. Lindor's been great. He was not great in April, and that's historically his thing, right? He does much better in the summer and the warmer weathers, but he's hitting great right now. Their Mets offense looks really good, and their rotation. I mean, that's the big edge, right? I mean, they throw a good to better starter every day. The Dodgers, they're just, crossing their fingers and hoping they get to that bullpen with Trinan and Kopech and Phillips and can close it out. But if they don't have a lead, not going to be the same Dodger team.
Yeah, no doubt about it, John. Like I'm looking at now the series. I was on the Mets late against the Braves and then against the Brewers, and I saw this kind of begin to crest in this way. The one worry point for me as I'm looking at the Mets from a distance is their bullpen is feels like a little on fumes right now from a distance. And what is the trust level for the closer at the end with Edwin Diaz? Like if I were looking for the Achilles arm, so to speak, of the team, it feels like it looks from a distance like Maton might be out of gas. How much can they rely on Diaz? I wonder what you think of that because you were talking about the advantage they have in the front of the game, but can they continually get through this lineup for, say, the last 6, 9, 12 outs of a game?
Yeah, that's not only from a distance, that's up close too. That is the question of the team. I don't know if I'm ready to call it the Achilles heel or arm of the team, but certainly the big question of the team is that bullpen, including Diaz. I mean, he struck out, in a row, three great hitters, starting with Mookie Betts, who never strikes out at the end of the game. And they're going to keep trusting him because if they're going to win this thing, Diaz is going to have to be Diaz. They're not going to win this with Maton closing games. I mean, Stanek's been pretty good. They've been okay, but they've been better than some of these bullpens, right? I mean, look, they got through the Philly bullpen, which was better on paper, but Estevez, the grand slam by Lindor, they killed Raisel Iglesias. I know that wasn't in the playoffs, but got them into the playoffs. A guy with his .71 whip, they destroyed him. Devin Williams, who never gets hit, Pete hit the home run. So bullpens are been questionable for a lot of teams. Hater as well. Now, not a Mets game, but that is the question. I don't think there's any doubt about that. They're going to keep riding Diaz, and that's not going to change. They're just going to hope that he can be something close to what you expect from Diaz.
Yeah, and if I'm flipping over to the Yankee side here to the ALCS, look, this road opened up for them the way it opened up. The Astros and the Orioles got eliminated early. It left the AL Central. You had a funny tweet about the crapshoot at this time of year, except for when the Yankees play the AL Central. If they finish this off, it will be 7 series against the playoff series against the AL Central since 2017, and they would be 7-0. But I was struck again last night watching them win a game that I don't mean to be self-referential here. I've said the same thing, John, as you know, all season is they could win the championship because they're so talented. But if they win, they're going to win because of talent. Like last night, I watched 2 guys get picked off a second base. I watched Jazz Chisholm cut in front of Anthony Volpe on a ground ball for some reason. Chisholm was involved in 2 of those plays. It's often Jazz Chisholm fantasy camp. He's having fun. That's all that seems to matter. These are overmatched AL Central teams right now in Kansas City and Cleveland. I do wonder if and when they get to the Mets and the Dodgers, if this will stand.
Yeah, I mean, the Yankees have 3 of the best 15 players in baseball, just like the Dodgers have 3 of the best 15. Now, does that mean they're all going to be playing well or be hot in October? Not necessarily. Obviously, Judge hit that home run. So if he's hot, I mean, they could be devastating. They really could. And they don't
Soto's
even,
great. Soto's
Soto's been great.
continue to be great.
Cole's been up and down a little bit, right? But they have 3 of the best 15 players in baseball. That's what the Dodgers have too. And you can win like that being a little top heavy. But I mean, even the Yankees, complimentary players make $25 million, right? I mean, Giancarlo Stanton is a complimentary player, but not in October, right? And we know what the potential is for him to do. So, yeah, in terms of talent, it's pretty overwhelming. In terms of talent, Rodon is probably the one of the three most talented starting pitchers in baseball,
Yeah.
right? But so he has the ability to do it, and he did it in game one. And I'm going to be shocked if Cleveland comes back here. I mean, I know that some people in the Central, particularly people in Detroit, who recall them beating the Yankees in the playoffs multiple times. We're not thrilled with my tweet. People get upset over tweets, but that's the
What I
reality.
say,
You know,
John, right? Don't look
yeah.
at
Yeah, that's the reality, though. I mean, the Yankees are better than these teams in the Central, no matter
they're
which
like
one it
they're
is.
like 29-7 against the Central. I mean, they have an outlandish record against the Central just
Right.
this year. They have an outlandish record against the Central over the last like almost decade. Like you want to start talking about the Jim Leland, Miguel Cabrera Tigers, that's a long time ago. In this era,
Right.
Yankees have dominated the AL Central. You know, it's often the Twins, but it's been Cleveland a few times. Now it's been Kansas City. These are, the Yankees are just better than these teams, and it's expressing itself on the field.
Right. And we're not being New York centric here. We mentioned the Astros having it all over the Yankees ad infinitum. That's
Yeah,
mentioned constantly. So it's not like we're being homers here. This is just realistic.
we're
These
mentioning that
Central
water
teams,
is wet, John. Like
right.
this is obvious at this point. Like,
And
like I,
I mean, look,
I,
Cleveland, give them credit, and Kansas City, because their payrolls are less than half of what the Yankees are. They did a great job to get there, but when you get there, and of course, they've got their own injury. I mean, Bieber is their ace, right? We haven't seen him all year after the Tommy John, and now they're piecing it together. They do a fantastic job there. I mean, same with Kansas City. They actually spent some money this year, still have a very low payroll by New York standards. Give them credit for getting there, but to actually beat the Yankees with Judge, Soto, Cole, Rodon, Stanton. I mean, it's not going to happen. I mean, it's just not. I mean, when they ask for the predictions, I think about it when it's the Dodgers, Mets, or whomever, but any other series. But when it's Yankees and Central, I feel like I'm picking up some free wins there on my predictions.
yeah, John, just to finish up on the Yankees here, is if Judge's homer last night, and we know that when he gets hot, like what that looks
Yeah,
like. Because, and again, who knows if all the other guys stay hot, but Gleyber Torres and Soto have been remarkable for a week and a half now of the playoffs, getting on in front of him, and Stanton has been brilliant behind him. Does Austin Wells' last at bat last night was the first time he looked good in the playoffs, really. Like it was a good at bat.
yeah,
It ended up being a line drive, but that at bat, you saw a lot from Wells this year. Worked it deep, swung at strikes, and did it. It's suddenly the top of the order is in order. And it's really about Judge. It's been this strange thing, John. In the playoffs, Soto and Torres kept getting on in front of Judge, and Judge did nothing.
yeah.
Lucky yesterday, a pop up was dropped by Brian Rucchio to allow a run to score. But Judge broke a game open. The Yankees haven't really broken a game open. Judge is their guy. They're a team that has to hit homers to feel good. They had hit 5 homers, 4 of them solo until Judge's 2-run shot that finally opened up a game. To me, the Yankees go as Judge goes. If Judge is just about to get hot, they're going to be very, very tough to beat, not just with Cleveland, but whoever gets out of the Met Dodger series.
No, I think the Yankees are the favorites in this derby. Any way you look at it, Judge hot or even not hot. I mean, look, Verdugo and Rizzo look pretty good now too, right? And Glaber has been fantastic lately. He was good by the end of the year. He was very good, and he's on his game right now. I mean, they just have incredible talent, just like the Dodgers do, but they're not as injured as the Dodgers. The Dodgers at full strength, you had Glass now and Kershaw and Stone and all those other pitchers to that team. They're a devastating team too, but right now they're not. They're a shell of themselves. The Yankees are basically healthy now that Rizzo has recovered again. I think they're the favorite at this point to win it all, whether Judge is hot or not hot. Soto is one of the best three hitters in baseball. Cole, healthy, is one of the best three pitchers in baseball. Rodon, one of the most talented three pitchers in baseball. And look, the bullpen has been really good too. So, I mean, it doesn't look like you said the teams are flawed. They're the least flawed of all of the teams, it feels like.
Well, they're the least flawed on talent, for sure. I still wonder.
I know what you're saying, but those are little things that they can overcome. I mean, when
They're
you're
right.
getting
They
guys,
overcome it with talent, and they
right?
might win a championship with talent,
Well, you're hitting a
which is the most
440-foot
important
home
thing.
run.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on the what did John Sterling say? Yes, I know you're at the game, you're busy writing, you're early, you're running, you stuff, all of that stuff. John Sterling said when Rizzo was thrown out between second and third, they looked like drunks on the bases. Just that's the Yankees.
Yep.
They do make more mistakes than you would expect, but right
Especially
now
on the
they're
bases.
talented, they're healthy, they can overwhelm teams. They're certainly going to get past Cleveland, right? I mean, somebody could save this and tell me I'm an idiot if a miracle happens and Cleveland wins the series, but they're going to get back. They're going to get in there. They're talented. They're healthy. I mean, to me, they're the favorite.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it plays out. We are going to talk to a World Series winning manager and one of our favorites. If you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman, Dusty Baker's up next. John and I are so thankful. This is John. This is our Moby Dick. This is our white whale. We've been asking Dusty Baker for quite a while to come join us on the show, and we're so appreciative that he does. That he has. He's working for TBS now, pre and post game show. But of course, in 2026, when they get together, Dusty, I'm not going to jinx you, but you're going to go in the Hall of Fame on that committee. Easy to forget what a great player you were. Besides one of the historic managers, I think we're talking about your seventh all-time in manager wins. So we're appreciating you joining us. And I wonder if the place to start is Terry Francona just came back and to manage again. I'm wondering, does it ever cross you? Why don't I start with this? Are you ever interested in coming back? And if not, what do you miss? What is the hardest to stay away? What's the biggest reason?
Well, the hardest to stay away is during the playoff times. Like now, this is when you kind of yearn to be there and have that excitement, because it's hard to replicate, the feeling of being there with the crowd and the magnitude of the game. I mean, I don't care what you do in life, what you do in business. If anybody's ever been on that field, during the playoff and the World Series, there's nothing like it. Now, I don't know if I'd come back or not. Tell you the truth, I've escaped a couple of health issues. I'm doing well now, even though they were more like warnings than they were health issues at that time that were telling me that, Dusty, you gotta like live a little cleaner. And I know Terry Francona has had some health issues too. But the time off, and I remember calling Lou Piniella one time and looking at Lou and how his face had brightened up and how great he looked, from not being the on stage in the daily grind. That's the whole thing. I mean, it is a grind, and and you can't turn it off, because when you leave, for spring training, you are there until the end. So whether I'd come back or not, I don't know. It'd have to be the exact right place, and it would have to be probably at a high salary, and it'd have to be for a good team or a contending team.
Well, we miss you in the dugout, and you've turned a lot of non-contenders into contenders. I mean, you won in Cincinnati. Not that many people have won in Cincinnati. You won everywhere. You won over 100 games in Washington. San Francisco was a consistent winner. Houston, you won the championship. So we miss you in the dugout. You're great on TBS. I watch it. I know we have to say Fox is great here too, since we're on a New York Post show, but
Yeah.
TBS, I love those guys. We had Jimmy Rollins on, Curtis Granderson, fantastic, and
Yeah.
Pedro. We work with him. It's terrific. I do
Lauren
want to ask.
Sahadi, we work with her.
Oh,
And
she's the
Lauren's
best.
great.
The
I mean,
best.
she is a great hostess. I'm telling you, she is probably as prepared as anybody that I've worked with.
She's
And this is sort of, it shouldn't be surprising, but she's the first one there, writing their notes and preparing and stuff. And I mean, it's easy to work under that environment, because it reminds me of when I was the manager. Like you'd like to be prepared. And there's nothing worse as a manager than to start the game feeling that you're unprepared.
I want to ask you, and following up on Joel's question, I was hearing in 2023 that you were thinking of retiring, and I know you mentioned your health issues, and it is a grind. It's a lot. No matter how old you are, it's a grind. Was that the whole reason that you stepped down? Because I know, I mean, obviously the modern game's a little bit different. I'm sure that all the managers have their battles with the front office. It seemed like, you managed for the championship your way. Pena was batting second. You had Maldonado playing. You won the World Series your way. I mean, was it all the health? Is that the reason that you stepped down, or was
No, it wasn't health at all. I mean, I'm doing great actually, and I still love the game. Just that when you go to weighing out your options in your life and you think about things. And then, some of the battles with the front office I've had for a number of years, sometimes you get tired of fighting City Hall on something that you're sure about. But then you also think about your family. You think about the amount of time that I've been away from home, and I hadn't seen my son play. My grandkids were 2 and 4, at the time. So, you start thinking about all the things that you have acquired in life, but you think about all the things that you missed out in life, and people say, "Hey man, have you ever been to Europe?" And I said, "No, I've been to Africa, Asia, different places." They're like, "No." And they said, "Why not?" And I said, "When the season was over, the last thing I want to do is get on another airplane." And especially when you're playing, when you get home and I'm working in the garden or I'm working in the vineyard, you realize what a great life that you have, but everybody's enjoyed your hard work probably more than you've enjoyed your hard work. So, in a nutshell, sometimes you think about it. I mean, it's time. Now, granted, I did want to win back to back. That's what I wanted to do, probably more than anything. Is the reason, I came back. And let's face it, at 70 years old, most people are just drawing their pension and and their Social Security, and I was making a good living and doing what I like to do.
So you mentioned battles with front offices. Bill Parcells famously said something, I hope I get the quote exactly, which is, if they want you to cook the meal, they should let you pick some of the ingredients also.
Sure.
What do you think, especially for an experienced manager, what level of influence, responsibility should you have beyond managing the 9 innings?
Well, it should be, the thing about modern baseball now is that, you're expected to kind of fall in line on what they want you to do. And then if it doesn't work, you're out there by yourself explaining it and justifying, and say we when it really wasn't we, but it was they, but you can't say they because then you don't sound like a loyal employee. So, I mean, it's always been a balancing act. I mean, this is nothing new. It's just that the lines are more, the more defined, in modern sports, period. It's not only in baseball, it's in football. I hear it in basketball. I hear it, everywhere. And, like I love Houston and, I like the organization. I like Jim Crane, especially because, he's one of the few people in the game that never, told me a lie. And I'm big on, being honest with me. And, but the one thing that kind of bothered me a little bit is that I only chose one person on my staff. And, when you choose your staff, most of the time loyalty comes with it. Not to say they were disloyal, but, that was A.J. Hinch's staff, everybody there except one guy. And, that's like inheriting another guy's, a president inheriting another president's cabinet. I mean, it's, it was, we had a footprint on how to win, but I wish that I could have had more freedom on choosing my staff.
You were the perfect choice for them. Coming off of their scandal, they needed to bring in somebody with a pristine reputation, who would be great uh, publicly, and help rebuild their reputation. So you were perfect for them. But I'm wondering about, they were known as an analytics team
Right.
only. Now they've got Reggie, they've got Bagwell, they got other people involved.
Mhm.
How did you, I mean, I know that they're still kind of analytically inclined, but as I said, you did get to eventually, at least I don't know what the battle was, but you played Pena, batted him high in the order. You had Maldonado play, even though he was hitting nothing, but the pitchers loved him. How are they in terms of, because it was known as the analytics team, but now at least from a distance, it looks like they're kind of mixed with Bagwell, Reggie, and the other BGO in
Well,
there.
well, that's what Jim Crane wanted. He wanted a more of a mixture versus just one way. And people talk about analytics. I mean, analytics have been around for years. It's just that it didn't have a name for it. Like I mean, from the time I started managing and studying, like I was studying first batter efficiency, or walks per inning from the bullpen, or who hits with runners in scoring position. All this stuff has been around for a long, long time. It's just that we've gotten very, very complicated with it in the terminology. And if you don't know the terminology, then supposedly you don't know what's going on. But hey, if we were just speaking layman terms, we'd all understand. You know what it is. And I remember my brother, who passed a few years ago. His favorite his favorite class in college at UOP was stats, and I couldn't understand it then. I mean, he's one of the first stat guys that I'd seen, even though he was a big basketball player. But he would explain different things, uh, to me. But see, the game is still played by human beings, and the game, and the players have feelings. When they're, when they're taken in and out, when they're pinch hit for, or when they're told that they can't hit this guy or that guy. I mean, as a former player, that would have really bothered me for you to take me out and make me feel like I can't necessarily hit this guy, because I'd stay up all night trying to figure out. That's the joy of competition, when you stay up all night trying to figure out how to hit this guy, or how to solve this guy. So, it's still a wonderful game. It's like last night during the game, it was a good game, but it was full of mistakes. It's full of base running mistakes, full of walks, full of just mistakes, and some of it by veteran players that know better. And so it's still a great game. It's just sometimes it's not as easy to watch as it used to be.
I've watched a lot of games this year of the Yankees, Dusty. Some of those veteran players actually don't know better. But
Yeah.
I wonder, because few people did it as long, as many games, and as well as you do. And we're constantly in this discussion of what does a modern manager do? How does he do it? I mean, you don't have to give a whole TED talk here,
Yeah.
but if you were like a younger manager came to you, not a Francona who knows how to navigate it at this, but somebody who's getting into it, what would be your words of wisdom for what you think a manager should be doing in 2024, 2025, etc.?
Well, something, they do come to me. Many young managers come to me. I mean, one of my proteges, was Mendoza. His name was Spider when he was with me at the Giants. He was a young kid. And I've had a lot of these guys. Bob Melvin, I was batting coach there. But the players really haven't changed that much. You know what I mean? I don't think kids as a rule has changed. What's changed is that they have rights and they know their rights. That's what's kind of different. And I would tell a modern player, to not to be honest with them, but you can't tell them everything, because you tell them everything, then they'll go to the front office and go to their agent and they say, you're in trouble, but you can't lie to them either, because a lot of these kids, a lot of them come from broken homes or one parent homes or whatever. And what I found is that a lot of these kids haven't been dealt with truthfully. I mean, they've been lied to. I mean, I talked to a few of my players, and they're like, "Hey, man, my dad used to tell me he's going to pick me up on Saturday and take me to the movies, but it would never show up." These are things that we're dealing with, societal problems as well as game problems. And so my whole thing with telling them to be as honest as possible. Try to get to know these guys because see the game has become so impersonal with the numbers. Just find out who's sensitive, find out who's not, find out who needs an arm around them, or who needs a kick in the butt, or who's a dominant person in their house. I mean, these are things that I learned from Bill Walsh when I first started this. He gave me his Bible on how to start an organization. Find out who the leader of the house is. I remember one time I told a player, "Hey man, I'm gonna tell your dad. Is your dad coming in?" He says, "Oh yeah, man, my dad and mom are coming in." I said, "Well, I want to talk to your dad." So he tells me, he says, "I don't care, talk to him." And I says, "Well, okay, I'm gonna talk to your mom." He goes, "Oh, don't tell my mom. Please don't tell my mom." I said, "Oh, that's who I need to talk to, in this situation." So I mean, they're men, but they're young men, and they're borderline, kids that are playing this game, and they need love as well as discipline, and not just treat them as if they're just a number.
Just to follow quickly, Dusty, because you mentioned him. You mentioned Spider. Do you know how Mendoza got that nickname? What is your history with him, and what did you offer as advice to him?
No, I don't know how he got that name. I guess in Latin America they call you whatever you are,
Right.
and in the United States you got to be sensitive to what you're calling somebody. And if you're skinny, they call you flaco. If you're fat, they call you gordo. If you got red hair, you call rojo. Whatever it is, whatever you are. And I imagine that he was gangly and skinny. And I mean, not imagine, he was. He was always very attentive. He was smart, and the thing I told him is just try to be as consistent in your personality as possible, and because that's what the guys need. They need consistency because we're so used to like things are going great, and then when things are going bad, guys won't talk to you. Sometimes. So you got to be consistent in your personality, and I mean, I'm glad for him. I'm surprised by the way they started, but his personality and his coaching staff. I talked to Anton Richardson, who the first base coach whom I know from the Giants, and sometime I'll call different guys I know, with words of encouragement, because see, we all need we're criticized so much that we all need, some encouragement, and you might not say I don't need any encouragement, but hey, man, that's why I don't do social media. That's why I don't read articles about myself, because sometimes the world can control your self-esteem, and I don't think anybody should control my self-esteem or yours either.
I'm going to go off the board here and ask a quirky question, but I'm going to note that not only are you a great player, played 19 seasons, 250 home runs or so, drove in well over 1,000 runs, and a great manager, but you always seem to be there when something special happens. You were on deck with Hank Aaron's record-setting home run. You were there when Rick Monday saved the flag. You were there for the Reggie game in New York. Unfortunately, you were there for the Bartman game. You're always there. One thing you were there for, and I believe, I mean, you were a part of it, was the high five. So I'm going to ask you, how did that
I wasn't
come?
always there. Listen, I wasn't always there by choice. Most of the time I was just inserted and chosen, I believe, by God to put me in these situations. Go ahead, man.
Yeah. What about the high five? I mean, you're
Well,
credited with developing the high five. Tell us about that.
yeah, well, everybody gives me credit for it, but I give Glenn Burke credit for it. And this is something that wasn't, I see guys now and all these handshakes and booty bumping and stuff. You know, it's all choreographed because they gotta like work on it in the thing in the clubhouse. And Glenn, I hit my 30th home run off of the last day of the season, my next to last bat, off my lifetime nemesis, J.R. Richards, and Glenn Burke came on deck circle. Well, he was there, and he threw his hands up, and all I did was reciprocate to what Glenn Burke did to me. And see, I didn't do it. Glenn Burke did it.
Okay.
And so you'd be surprised the amount of people that ask me, am I getting paid for National High Five Day? And I was like, I wish, But, it's just something that, it's just something that happened, and then the next year on the yearbook, they had a picture of Steve Garvey and myself high-fiving with the Dodgers, and I guess it grew from there.
Dusty, you referenced family earlier. Your son Darren made it to the majors this year. It's a small sample. He went 7 for 14. Unlike his old man, he hits from the left side, I noticed.
Yeah.
What does it mean for a proud dad to see his son break through? And can you give us a little scouting report on if you think Darren is going to what he's going to be moving forward?
Well, like that was his goal this year to be in the major leagues. And, he thought he was moving slow, but I said, son, you're moving really kind of fast because, this is your third year in pro ball. You spent 2 years in AAA, so he's been on the fast track. His baseball IQ is great. Like he knows how to play. Even when he was a kid, he'd sit in the dugout watching all the time. Never, all the guys liked him because he was never that kid that was out of line or distracting. He was, from the time he was little, my wife would say he could sit up in the stands and watch the whole game and just pay attention and watch the whole game on TV. How many kids can watch a whole game or even want to? And he would slide in the Safeway and slide in the airport. And he made up his mind when he was young, because I wanted him to play everything. He's playing basketball, taekwondo, and a bunch of other stuff. Well, he knew he wanted to be a baseball player. And, he dedicated himself. He went to college, which I'm most proud of. He went to Cal. And he graduated, which I didn't, which I promised my mom I would. But the thing about it is, he's a ball player. The thing I'm not crazy about is how they move these kids around to make everybody a utility player. I wish they would keep him in one spot, which second base is his spot, but the organization he's in, they have an outstanding second baseman. So, he's going to get stronger. He's working on that every day, but he's more of a speed man now. Speed, defense, base running, which is the game's kind of turning that way. You got to have some table setters like, the guys that I really love are like, Quan with Cleveland, Arise. I mean, they get on base, for the big boys. And this is how baseball was played in my day. But now they want everybody to be a power hitter and a big boy, but everybody can't drive that Mercedes. Sometimes you got to drive a Volvo, so yeah. So like, I really enjoy watching him play. It's more nerve-wracking watching him play than it is managing a game or even playing myself.
You never talk about the Hall of Fame. We're assuming you're going to go in and certainly deserving of it. And first of all, do you think about that at all? Do you care very much about that? And then, I mentioned the things that you were there for. You were there for Barry Bonds' record-setting season of home runs. You're a great friend of Hank Aaron as well. What's your overall perception of who holds the home run record? Do they both hold the home run record? And does Barry Bonds be in the Hall of Fame too?
Well, first I want to say, which I was just thinking about, I'm going to dinner with Hank Aaron's daughter tonight, and I'm in contact with his wife Billy. It's her birthday today, and so I want to say happy birthday to Billy and all his kids, Gail, Hanky, and Larry. But I don't really think about the Hall of Fame because that's a ways off. That's 2026. You know what I mean? And so, when you get to a certain age, especially like I'm at 75, you're grateful for every day that you breathe, especially of all the guys that I knew that have passed on. I mean, this has been some year. Cepeda, McCovey. I mean, not McCovey. May.
Mace.
You got Tion. I mean, you look at all these guys that I looked up to, and so it's like, hey, that's too far down the future. And there's nothing guaranteed, and so therefore, if you don't put your faith in that kind of stuff, then you don't be disappointed. Because I've been disappointed in my life on a few things that I expected, like in Washington, I won 95 and 97 games, and then I was out of a job for 2 years, and then people like, oh man, you're three-time manager of the year, but I got all those with San Francisco. So you mean to tell me I couldn't have been the manager of the year a couple times on the jobs that I did in other places? And no, I don't put a whole bunch of stock in it. I don't hold any bitterness, because I'm extremely happy and glad for what's happened in my life and my career. But a few things bother me when people say, "Oh, congratulations, man! You took 5 teams to the playoffs." Well, there shouldn't have been 5 teams. You know what I mean? And so I look at it. So as far as the Hall of Fame, if I'm going to go in, I hope I'm still alive, and at least I can enjoy it. Don't want to be, like Ron Santo or some of these guys that didn't get to enjoy the fruits of victory, as a sort of would say.
So just quickly, the last thing I want to ask about is you were with the Astro team that went to the ALCS that 7th time in a row. You were obviously they didn't go as far this year. We're possibly looking at Bregman leaving this year, Tucker and Framba Valdez the year after. Do you have a feeling at all that we've kind of like what they did was amazing, but maybe they're at the end of something right now? Or do you believe in Jim Crane in that group that there is a regenerative possibility with them?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do believe in Jim Crane because he's not opposed to to spending some money to stay on top. I mean, he expects to stay on top. I mean, I don't play golf. If you talk to people that do play golf with him, I mean, he expects to win, and he's spoiled by winning, and winning spoils you. And so, I don't see him sparing, any expense to try to remain on top and get a good team. I hope they sign Bregman because he's one of the pillars on that team and one of the guys. I mean, he's one of the guys that I can depend on, to send a message, and I don't have to tell him what message to send. I mean, this is what I loved about Bregman, and Tucker and Framber are pillars on that team. I mean, you got Tucker that can do everything. You got Framber, to me, who's in the Cy Young Award race that you never hear about. And he's probably the best left-hander in baseball, and he's thrown more innings. I mean, people say Scoville, but I mean, Scoville hadn't been around as long as Framber. And you look at Framber's durability, and I was just thinking about this the other day. There are teams that their pitchers break down for whatever reason, but those teams are a lot of times teams that go to the playoffs quite a few times. And while everybody's home resting, they're still pitching. I was thinking about the other day about Lincecum, Kane, Vogelsong, and those guys are going, and their careers were cut short other than Bumgarner, but he's so strong, and the same thing happened to me with Carey and
Mark Pryor.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are, if you want to win, you got to overextend. So what happens if you overextend for 3 or 4 years in a row? That's why I'm amazed by LeBron James. I know I'm changing the subject, but this guy been in the playoffs, and Tom Brady, they've been in the playoffs like 15 years in a row, and then they go to the Olympic team. Well, LeBron, when do they rest and when do they regroup? And so this is something that I think about all the time, because now the big thing now is about rest and recovery. That's all you hear about, rest and recovery. where when I was coming up, all the Latin guys played winter ball like every year. I'm talking even the stars. You know, I was on the team in Puerto Rico with Mike Cuellar, Tony Perez, Julio Gotay, Don Baylor, Orlando Cepeda, and these guys were already start, and every team was the same. So I'm a little confused about the rest and recovery and which one is correct.
Dusty, just a few things as we wrap up. Number one, to John's discuss, you could turn to the NBA with me anytime you'd like. I love the league, so you want to talk LeBron, I'm cool with it.
I love the NBA.
Yeah, by the way, it's one of the things I always admired about those dynasty Yankees was their durability through October and their hunger to keep doing it. And Dusty, before we let you go, it's just we've talked about your career. I looked at it before. You had a 116 OPS plus. I think people don't remember. Like for a modern stat, 116 OPS plus. You know who else? Adrian Beltre, Barry Larkin, and Roberto Alomar, all Hall of Famers, exactly 116 plus. Derek Jeter from those Hall of Fame Yankees, 115. You have them beat. I mean, they were middle infielders, but it gets lost to time. You're a great player. And the other thing is that came up earlier, Dusty. And I'm sure John felt this way also. I loved interviewing you when you were manager all over the place because invariably you would bring up someone like Bill Walsh like you did. I remember one time talking to you and all of a sudden we were talking about the Secret Service. I think baseball is 6 degrees of Dusty Baker. Everybody has come in contact with you in some way in the last 40, 50 years. And I know John and I appreciate that we're two people who've come in contact with you and kind of gotten your great stories and wisdom. And we appreciate you bringing it to the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.
Well, you're welcome. And a guy that I forgot who was instrumental in my amateur career and pro career was Al Addles, who I'm going to his funeral in November because I met him at the Squaw Valley Warriors basketball camp with Rick Barry, where I was named the MVP, and then he stayed in contact with me. And then he would help me in my coaching career, my playing career. Then I remember asking him, there was a player that I couldn't get through, and he told me, he says, "Hey, everybody doesn't want an A in your course. There's some kids that want to B." And every time he had Alzheimer's or dementia at the end there, but he always remembered me, and he'd always ask me, "How's my jump shot?" That's so just that was just a little side note that I was thinking about all the great people that I've met.
All right, Dusty, we appreciate you so much. All the best. Keep doing your great work on TBS, and thank you for joining us. John and I thank Dusty Baker, of course, for joining us on the show. John, hit or error?
I'm going to praise the Cincinnati Reds, one of the former teams of Dusty, for hiring Terry Francona. I think that came out of nowhere. Good job by the Reds to bring him back to Ohio. He's one of the greatest managers of all time, certainly will be a Hall of Famer, and really a big boost to that organization. I thought Barry Larkin was the natural choice, also being a Hall of Famer and a guy who certainly be a natural to get through to L.A. De La Cruz and make him even better, but you can't beat Terry Francona as a manager. So hats off and a thumbs up and a gold star. And what do we call it? A hit for Terry Francona and the Reds.
John, we talked quite a bit to Dusty Baker about the Hall of Fame. Francona would have been in that group in winter 2026, who would have been considered, and I think probably gotten in with Dusty. And now he resets his clock because he's managing again. And some future date, he'll go into the Hall of Fame as well. John, I'm going to stick with a manager also. I'm going to give a hit to the Phillies for bringing back Rob Thompson. There is bias here. I really like Rob Thompson. He's a friend of this show. He's a friend of reporters and writers everywhere. He's such a accessible, kind guy. But also, the Phillies haven't had a distinguished history of sustained success. And this team has been very successful. It went to a World Series. It went to an LCS. By the way, it just dethroned the Astros as the NL East champs. I think the easiest thing in the world is to say, let's blame everything on the manager when something doesn't go well in October and change course. And then you don't know about the next guy you bring in. What you know about Rob Thompson is he knows how to get his team through the 162. He seems to be a well liked manager among his group. And so I am going to give a hit there for the Phillies for bringing him back.
Right, yeah. Dave Dombrowski, another friend of the show, knows a winner when he sees one. He's hired Jim Leland in multiple places and kept bringing him back because he knows there aren't that many people who can do the job. But Rob Thompson can do a good job because he is a great people person and a great friend of the show. And if you recall, he came on the eve of being in the World Series. I don't know if it was an hour before the World Series was to start, but it was a little bit surprising that he was willing to do it. And that's the kind of guy it was. It wasn't that I'm exaggerating. It was the day before, but still, I got to give him credit for doing that, and I love that move by the Phillies.
Yeah, John, and I second that. Like you and I work diligently each week to try to get timely guests, and it's not easy because people are so busy, especially this time of year. So yes, it was noticed when Tom did that for us. It's always noticed the work of our producer, Tommy Hogan, who does such a great job week to week. Don't forget, go to the New York Post Sports YouTube page to give a view of our show, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen on a podcast. Please rate and review. And we're in the thick of it, John. A couple of weeks of the playoffs down, both New York teams still alive. We hope you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman to navigate the whole way.